2, 1, I'm live.
All right, let's bring in Bins. Matthew, you're on duty for, Jeonbuk. A Jeonbuk game to start the season for you against Bucheon, the newcomers. Now, have you mentioned the previous meetings between these two teams?
Well, two of the previous meetings, and I think the only two in recent memory is 2016 and 2017. They played 1 year after another, and I attended the 2016 one, and I watched the 2017 one through a grainy Instagram, Twitter live feed from whatever stand it was on. But it was both in the FA Cup, both in Jeonju, one at Jeonju World Cup Stadium, one at the Civil Stadium, because that's where they were in 2017, and both won by Bucheon. One 3-2 on the night, and the other one penalties. What else? So not a great record actually for Jeonbuk coming into this particular match against Bucheon, but we have got two very different teams, I'd like to think, 9 years on.
Just a bit, yeah. No one left, I'm sure. We've only just said goodbye to Churchill soon, so not many left, if any. But we obviously just saw the Super Cup at the weekend just gone. We saw, I suppose, some insight into how Jeonbuk might line up this season. A 4-2-3-1, which was perhaps a bit of a surprise for Chung Jung-yeon, who does like a 4-4-2. What can we expect, do you think, in this game in terms of personnel and shape? Any areas that you think might be tweaked or changed?
I think I'm going to be a little bit boring and say probably the same again. I mean, the manager did kind of tease saying, well, it's not always going to be this way, but I think he chose a midfield, three of them formerly Gimcheon Sangmu under his tutelage. They'd all discharged in November, so they had recently been working under him. He's entrusted three of them. Obadan, obviously a new signing as well. He looked good and ready. So, I mean, that's four of the midfield five. Kim Jin-kyu in there for good measure. And, Bruno Motta, who coming in as a striker, scoring on his debut, having a pretty good game overall. And probably the most experienced of the defence he could put out there, Kim Yong-bin and Park Ji-soo in the centre-back. I'd say that's probably where the weakness is, just mainly because on time not really spent together. But I wouldn't imagine you'd change those for anybody who was on the bench.
Right, yeah, I mean, newcomer returning to the league in a sort of a reliable, experienced pro. Going to take a bit of time, though, to get some sort of a rhythm between those two. I suppose with Bucheon, then, have a look at them and see what sort of issues they may be able to pose to Jeonbuk, because obviously they were pretty formidable over those two legs against Suwon. They've got some familiar names that they brought in the transfer window, and of course probably the MVP from last year, Basani. Where and how can Bucheon look to pose problems for Jeonbuk?
I think you just said it. Basani, he's the one I've got my eye on. I think he's probably one of the players to watch this weekend. But the main area for Bucheon to probe is that spine. I mean, they did beat Daejeon, but it is a completely new spine to that entire Jeonbuk team. I think by playing Meng Song-eun and Obadan, it did offer that double defensive midfield reassurance in front of a back line. Park Ji-soo, obviously very experienced player, very talented player, but didn't actually look quite up to pace yet, in my opinion. I thought he was actually the weakest of the starting 11, which is a big thing to say. I don't think he'll be that way for very long, but if you're going to verse Jeonbuk, it's still now to verse them. And I think Basani, he is very established with Bucheon, and he obviously had a great season last year as the captain as well. And I think if he can just keep testing these centre-backs, I don't think Daejeon did it enough. I think Daejeon tended to try and play out wide, try and utilise their new signings in Ludvigsen and Obwon-sang, not to much effect. I think if you can just keep probing that centre, you'll find some joy. So, I think that's what Bucheon have to do.
I think those two centre-backs in particular, they're fine when they're running backwards and forwards, but Basani will run across and he'll cut in and he'll make them sort of move in uncomfortable ways. And obviously we saw that with that goal he scored in, I think it was the second leg against Suwon.
I like to say yes.
second leg, that goal where from the halfway line. Not that I don't think he'll try that at Jeonju Castle, but I mean, you just never know. So I think, if Bucheon can get Jeonbuk uncomfortable, get players moving in ways that they don't really like to do. Because Jeonbuk are going to have a lot of the ball, but when the ball isn't in front of them, how are they going to cope with that? Apart from Bassani then, I mean, who are you looking forward to seeing back for Jeonbuk? You said it might be the same starting 11. Motta, perhaps? I mean, he scored on his debut.
Yeah. I mean, it's great he scored on his debut. He really caused some problems. He had some really good movement off the ball, I thought. So I am looking forward to seeing him. I still think Lee Dong-jun is quite a tantalising prospect. He hit the post in sensational fashion. He also got a shot in pretty close range. I can't remember whether it was flagged for offside or whether it was just saved, but either way, it was a good save, regardless of whether he was in that position. But he couldn't get on the score sheet. I think he could have a bit of joy. Obviously, I thought the best player at the weekend against Daejeon was actually left back Kim Tae-hyun. 2 assists, obviously, but he also created quite a few chances as well, and he offered that extra bit of quality on the left. So I think he could cause some damage. But yeah, I mean, in terms of exciting player to look forward, that's not offense to Kim Tae-hyun. He did a very good job and quality, but Lee Dong-jun is still my one to watch, I think.
This seems to be really part of Jeonbuk's heritage to have a fullback who can provide assists. And a winger who's very very direct. You know what I mean? It seems to be different personnel, but there's still a bit of heritage there. You know what I mean?
The Jeonbuk DNA, as they like
Jeonbuk
to
DNA.
bandy about a bit up at
Exactly.
Castle.
Well, I suppose that brings us to the end of that. I mean, score prediction?
Oh, I still think Jeonbuk are going to ease past this, but I think, as I said to Alex after the Super Cup, you don't see big score lines this early on in the season. I still think it's going to be probably 1 or 2-0 to Jeonbuk. It won't be. There's definitely not going to be a thrashing. I think Bucheon are too well organised to allow for that. So maybe 1 or 2-0 to Jeonbuk.